Alachua County Sheriff's deputies arrested 4 people after a Gainesville traffic stop turned into something much bigger. TV20's Jordan Markov explains what landed them behind bars on charges of resisting arrest.
What started as a traffic stop in front of a nearby grocery store ended in a fight between multiple deputies and people in front of this building, when a driver didn't make a complete stop entering the Ma and Pa grocery store last night on Southwest 8th Avenue. An ASO deputy pulled them over.
Our policy is that we call the driver back. As the deputy was doing this, he had an odor of marijuana coming from the car, which allowed him to search the car.
As the deputy started searching the car, people nearby, including Pharaoh and Egypt Young, started recording the incident and were asked to step back.
He refused and eventually got up in close to the car. There was an Egypt that was also involved. She came up to the car also after being told to stay away.
According to the arrest report, 2 other people interfered with the investigation as well. Eureka Franklin, Omega Franklin, Egypt Young, and Pharaoh Young were all arrested on charges of resisting arrest, among other charges.
And I live 2 blocks down the street. If you're obstructing justice, doesn't matter what you're doing, that's punishable by law, and you will get arrested. I don't want to call this a rough area because this is my neighborhood, but you know, it's a little dicey sometimes.
ASO spokesperson Art Forgy says they encourage people to record police encounters.
But once you cross the line and interject yourself into that, then you've crossed the line and it's taken it to a different level.
He says no one was injured. Reporting in Gainesville, Jordan Markov, TV 20 News.